Hello, friends. Welcome to Great People Interview Series once again. And today we have Jansen. Welcome, Jansen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Friends, we got a brilliant topic today that will be discussing. And Jansen is currently a research fellow at the Inclusion Initiative at London School of Economics, which is completed, well, or just completing 130 years. Um, so one of the very prestigious London school. Um, and well, she's from Turkey originally. And then obviously she studied in different countries, worked in different countries, uh, and here in London for about 5 years or so now. So it'll be great to take her perspective uh, into a brilliant topic that we'll be discussing today. And before I get into the topic, let me invite once again Jansen. Can you please tell us more about yourself? Because you're an economist as well, and you're doing great work. And also tell us about your work in Uganda.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you. Yes, so my name is Jansen, and I am an economist by training, and I am currently an academic. I do research. I am based at London School of Economics, and yeah, I'm originally from Turkey. Since I was, since at an early age, I always had an interest in the world and inequality in the world, and which led me to study economics. So I actually started out as a development economist because I was really interested in income inequalities. And then I worked in developing countries doing development research, particularly in Uganda. I spent about 2 years doing field research. And then during my doctoral studies, I was also in Uganda, and I developed interest in what we call behavioral economics, which is kind of at the intersection of economics and psychology. So it takes into account the human aspects of it, like human behavior, and then gender equality as well. So I started studying a bit of gender equality in the development context. And then I graduated, I was about to graduate from my PhD, COVID hit, and development projects stopped, and there was a lot of uncertainty about development projects. And I got this amazing offer from the University of Exeter to study gender and inclusion in the workplace. So then I switched to gender in the developing context to gender in the workplace. And it's been about 5 years, well, over 5 years now, that I moved to the UK to take the job, and then eventually moved to the LSE. But for the past 5, 6 years, I studied diversity and inclusion in organizations. So my work draws on behavioral economics, field experiments, and rigorous data analysis. And overall, we just want to make workplaces a bit fairer and more inclusive.
Which is the topic today. How do we make the workplaces fairer workplaces with the dimension that we want to include in the discussion is diversity and inclusion. These words are often used together, almost meaning the same thing. So first, Johnson, can you just clarify for the audience the difference between inclusion and diversity?
Yes, that's a great question because I really wanted to bring that. Yes, diversity. I think understanding the importance, like the distinction between diversity and inclusion, is key for our debate, for our studies. Mainly because, let me just define it. Diversity effectively means representation, representational parity. If you think you have a diverse workplace, that means you have people working from different backgrounds, depending on the dimension of diversity. It could be gender diversity, it could be ethnic diversity, it could be any sorts of diversity.
Yep.
But it's more about numbers. So, and then because it's easier to measure, and I think organizations have focused a lot on diversity recently. And because of this, there has been great progress in terms of representational parity. However, the harder challenge is inclusion. Inclusion is what happens once people are in the organizations. So it's about, and it's not as easy to measure. It's about their lived experiences. It is about whether their voices are heard, whether their ideas are appreciated, whether they feel safe enough to raise their hands and speak up in meetings, whether they feel safe enough to challenge even and whether they can fully contribute to the workplace, the work, whether they can bring themselves into work. So that is the inclusion bit. And yeah, so I think these are two very different things, but the focus has been more on the diversity because it's easier to measure, it's easier to make progress on. But the problem is simply just bringing together is not enough, because either these people, if they don't feel included, if they don't feel safe, either you're going to lose these people, or the people will stay, but they're not going to contribute fully, and the organization will not benefit from their different perspectives, ideas, contributions anyway.
Yeah. And as per your research, you also said that the reason why diversity and inclusion has not always been treated as business priority, um, and that's why it's not really translating into what's actually happening into the workplaces. Can you just elaborate that?
Yes, of course. So we always say, yeah, there has organizations collectively have spent a lot of resources on diversity and inclusion initiatives. But when we still think today, we don't actually know what works. And this is one part of the reason, and one reason is what I was saying earlier, that because it was not treated as a priority, it was not treated as a business priority. And like, imagine if this were marketing or finance or product development, we would expect organizations to test things out, to collect data, to learn from experience, to recalibrate, and then do it again, right? Like this
Yeah.
is almost like a scientific approach to things. Whereas with diversity and inclusion, it hasn't been like that. So
Yeah.
companies commonly implemented programs that sound sensible, right? Oh,
Yeah.
and or others are doing it. Oh, there's this huge trend. Let's do it. Let's bring in a speaker. Let's do diversity training. They did
Yeah.
it, but they didn't necessarily evaluate the effects of it. They don't know what happened afterwards. So I think
Yeah.
that's so again, I think that's one of the biggest shifts in my thinking, and I think the academic debate is also changing. So it's not about the companies, whether they care about it or not, whether they care about diversity inclusion or not, whether it's the question is whether they're approaching it the right way. And the right way is like the business priority, like almost like having a scientific approach. It's about testing, it's about counting, again, collecting information and learning, and then changing and testing and trying. So that's how we try to approach it, at least in my research. Experimentation is a big part of it. So we are encouraging the data-driven, evidence-based diversity and inclusion initiatives.
I think if I bring in a dimension, and you can probably validate, if we have, uh, well, I think traditionally workplaces, we've been saying offices, people in the offices, right? Now the world has changed dramatically over a decade or so, and more so after COVID. Remote working has become a norm. It's easy. So if we have a wrapper for diversity and inclusion as finding talent that we can't locally source easily, and secondly, if we can have cost benefit of having these people remotely working from their countries, uh, the countries where we find um, the talent, which is less expensive than here in our local country. So if these two are, you can say, tangible measures, which also helps, diversity and inclusion. Well, diversity to a large extent, as you rightly said. Inclusion is something that is still debatable and to be experimented, because we don't know, how much ready the person would be who is remotely working from a different country, and how much it actually works, and it kind of probably needs a different way of handling, but diversity for sure, I guess. So do you think that in the changing scenario, it might be slightly easier with these two reasons, cost and finding the right talent easily and quickly. Maybe the diversity could be an easier way to implement, and can it be made a business priority because of that?
I think it could be if the organization and the legal framework allow it. So I
Ah,
think one of the reasons is, I mean, it's very cost effective, as you said, like hiring someone, let's say from a lower income country, and they don't have to pay as much. Then it's very cost effective, but there will be probably some legal barriers again, or it could be possible for certain jobs, but not all others.
yeah.
So I think there's a little bit question around it. And to be honest, I don't have research on that myself, so I won't be able to talk from a credible perspective. But that can totally help. And I think I mean, we are pushing for more flexible working, remote, but not entirely remote sometimes, but like working from home, like maybe doing like 1 or 2 days in the office. Like there's now a huge debate around changing how we work. That is true. And if we
Mm.
do that, and I think what you're saying is kind of part of the conversation, then we can hire people from different countries with, they are very talented people in the rest of the world, not in the country that we're looking at necessarily. So I think that will really help with diversity. Inclusion is a bit tricky because I don't know to what extent that person will feel included, but I think it is possible. It's just we need to have the structure, the
Yeah.
technology in place to make it happen. Like if you're going to do a meeting, you need to ensure that the meeting maybe, first of all, it's not a huge meeting so everybody can talk. Maybe you need to fairly allocate the talking time or the note taking. All that there should be an infrastructure, there should be technology around it to make it possible. I don't think we're quite there yet, but definitely I can say that the conversation is shifting towards more inclusive approaches like flexible working and remote working.
That's quite interesting what you said about speaking in a meeting and probably giving opportunity and so on. An interesting bit to share is, in our internship model that we bring in students from various countries for our clients in UK and Europe. Uh, we have a mentor as part of the call between the intern and the client every week when they are discussing work. Off the call, we do give them inputs. Hey, you need to say these things in this way because that's how the client would probably take it in the right spirit, because it's a cultural thing, it's not English. Also, I think if the person can be mentored, in this case it is students, but as you were saying, we can generalize it. If there is a mentor who says, well, it's not only the employers or meeting coordinators responsibility, it's your responsibility as well to take that initiative and raise your hand to talk. Because if you're hesitating, that's equally not good. And I think in case of students, we do that. Sometimes we tell the students that, look, this is what you need to say in the next call. So our mentor can say it, but we say, no, we are not telling you, but you have to say that in the call. So the client gets the confidence that it is the student who is understanding and doing the work. And then obviously, over the period of time, the students catch up, and mentors is pretty much watching the call, and the clients are directly discussing things. And the student who, in the first couple of months, who were just listeners, start giving ideas in the third and fourth month of their internship, which is great to see. So
Yeah.
good point you mentioned there about how inclusion can be thought through. It needs
Yes.
proper thinking.
Definitely. Inclusion, and that's a great point on meetings. So you always think, okay, is it me who needs to raise my hand, or is it them who need to provide the space it's both ways, obviously. Like it's good to invest in yourself, maybe raise your hand, and then what you're talking about mentorship, it's actually career development. And there are a lot of these things, not necessarily in remote context, but also in organizational context. Like these are under career development, and people go get mentoring, and the mentors then tell them to do things in a certain way. This is part of the career development process anyway, and it is very important that organizations like managers need to be aware of. I think cultural differences are very important here because, again, in some cultures, it'll be more easy to just raise your hand and speak. Like, I'm just going to give an example. Like in the US, for instance, the culture is a bit more open. Like everybody can raise their hand and talk. Whereas in some Asian cultures, it is more difficult to just raise your hand or interject actually and contribute. So I think employers also should be aware of those differences. And if
Yeah.
someone's consistently silent, maybe giving them an opportunity, inviting them to contribute in the meetings is one thing. And I think also personality perspective, like some people, like, extroverts and introverts, some people think and then speak, whereas some people just speak and then they're kind of thinking at the same time. So giving them an opportunity to maybe, I think it's one of the important examples of inclusion. If you just give them a heads up before the meeting, what the meeting is about or what the questions are, they can maybe think about process and then come to the meeting and then contribute. So I think those really small things will help more people to contribute.
That's fantastic. I think great perspective there. You worked across different countries and cultures. It's quite evident with the authority you're saying things. But your global experience, if you can share, some of your understanding around equality, opportunity, and any specific examples that if you can give. Not necessarily from the UK, but other countries. I think it will be great
Yeah.
for my UK audience as well to know.
Yeah, I think that's something what I just mentioned. I mean, the world is so diverse. It is like incredibly rich and like cultures, like even within a country, there are different cultures in the different regions. It is so rich. And there is no one way of being inclusive. I think that's what I learned. Like every country is different. Every organization is different. Local norms, like, the family you grew up in, like it's just so diverse. I think that's what I learned. Because again, if you're in the UK and you might adapt to the UK norms, but then again, if you're coming from a different country, and then if you have colleagues from different countries in the world, like it's just there's no one way of doing things. And I think that's the most important thing is being open-minded about how things are done or how people communicate, how people contribute, because it's really, really different. And if you just lived in one country, it's very difficult for you to comprehend like how different it can be. But in my experience, this is the seventh country I lived in. So like my experience is just like, you just don't assume, just ask, just give them the opportunity, give them the space. It's just very, very important.
Fantastic. Well, it just struck to me one of the areas you talk about 4T framework. Uh, uh, and it's quite interesting, to know very research oriented, view of this. So, can you just elaborate what is this 4T framework?
That's great. This is a great framework. It's very simple. It's my co-authors who kind of came up with the 40 framework, but it's based on our research for years with organizations. So we're basically trying to say that meaningful change in diversity and inclusion outcomes, they don't necessarily require big programs like expensive, ambitious programs. It can happen through like really small changes in everyday decisions and everyday processes and like, routines, right? As long as you target the right decision, as long as you do it in a timely manner. So the 4T framework is 4T. We think that inclusion interventions should be one, theory based. The first T is theory. Theory based, we mean like it should be grounded in behavioral science. It should be grounded in evidence. So you look around, you listen, and you kind of have a theory of change of like why if you do this would change this behavior or how it would change it, and then what happens. So you have a theory of change in mind. And the second is targeted. And we have research on that, but we want the interventions, if you're going to intervene and make the workplace, let's try to be more inclusive, then the intervention should be targeted. So it should not be like ad hoc standalone program, like a speaker coming and talking to you about diversity. It
Yeah.
should be aimed at a specific behavior. There's like hiring, for instance, or promotion decisions. It should be targeted at this particular decision point, because then it's going to have like effects on people's careers. Like if you can intervene at the right moment and it can change hiring outcomes or promotion outcomes, that will lead to meaningful change. And then the third thing is timely. The interventions should be timely. They should be delivered at the right moment. Decisions are being made. For instance, we have the study around diversity training on hiring. What we did, we intervened, we created a diversity video, which was targeted targeted hiring. It was exclusively on hiring in diversity hires, right? And then we sent this video just before hiring managers could screen the CVs of the candidates. So it was in the right moment, just before they could look at the CVs, we sent them the video. So it was very timely. And then the fourth T is tested. So we want the interventions to be tested. We want to test them. We want to evaluate them rigorously to understand whether they work or how much or for which group of people they worked. So the fourth is theory, targeted, timely, and tested.
Wow, this is amazing. I
Yeah.
think not only we're discussing, the generic inclusion and diversity, but I think this 4T framework, the way you explained, actually helps organization to understand how to implement in their organizations, and how to actually find success in doing so.
Yeah.
I think very important area of the conversation.
Yeah, so I can actually give you one example because I couldn't elaborate when I was talking, but
Yes,
we did
please.
this in a big, large field experiment. We collaborated with a large tech company, and they have operations in 100 countries in the world, right? We
Oh,
developed this diversity training because they had diversity training, but diversity training is usually given to people and as part of onboarding when they first start their jobs, or maybe every other year. But it's completely disconnected from the everyday decisions that they make, such as performance evaluations or promotion nominations.
yeah.
So we're like, okay, how can we make this more useful? So what do we do? We kind of tweaked it and we developed this hiring diversity training. And again, it was based on hiring exclusive, so it was very targeted. And then
Yep.
again, we sent the training to managers just before they looked at the CVs of the candidates, right? So it was very timely. What happened is that as a result, then we evaluated, obviously, tested rigorously, and then what happened is that as a result of our intervention, the people, well, there were a lot of women who got hired, but also there were a lot of people from different countries, different nationalities that got hired for the jobs open in the treatment group, because we have a control group and a treatment group, because we're running an
Wow.
experiment. And the treatment group, there were a lot more people from different nationalities that got hired, including from the global south. So I think, and this was a really big deal. We published really well just last year. So that's why we're basing our communication on this, again, theory-based, targeted, timely, and tested interventions.
Fantastic. I think just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a senior executive in one of the large organization, senior vice president actually, uh, and she was saying when it comes to they do have under their social initiatives, they have they hire students, they want to train them and so on. By the way, they have taken care of the legalities and the access issues and security. Having done that, she said our problem is, um, even though we want to hire from different countries, we don't know enough about those countries to to hire, correctly, because here we know, which university is at what level, and all that, the grades, and we understand that. But the system in that country we don't understand. So I think we suddenly saw that, well, as London School of Digital Business, we have that opportunity, and we kind of crafted saying, look, we understand those countries, where we have, well, right now we have touched about 70 plus countries, um, where we understand, and we have some local representation as well. So we will become your kind of hiring partners. We'll get you those people, and so they will be through the filter that you want, and then you can do the final level interviews or whatever and do your selection. But they are validated, filtered according to your parameters, and of course, all the legalities. And so I think, to your point, large organizations looking for their diversity and inclusion, but not necessarily have the know-how of those countries. They could probably go through, should I call now, hiring partners,
Mm-hmm.
who could be the people who do that work and make
Mm-hmm.
it easier for them. I think
Definitely.
that's a fantastic
Like
solution.
people like you or organizations specialize, in particular, like, things like that. I think that could be really, really helpful. And it's clear that they don't know and they cannot possibly know. But I think there's also a debate right now, let me tell you, about like a shifting attention from CVs and qualifications and, like university degrees to skills.
Yeah,
So if companies hire not based on your CV and look at, oh, it is a good institution, but obviously in the rest of the world they don't know how good the institution is. If they
yes,
just invite a lot of candidates and just give them an assessment and like task based, like if they just test their skills that they require for the job, then they're not going to have to do that. So there is now a shift again in the debate where we're
yeah,
encouraging more skills-based, task-based assessments to give a lot of people a better chance, because especially in the age of this, AI and
yeah,
everything, you can learn pretty much everything online. Like you
yeah,
don't have to go to the best university to be a great programmer, for instance. Why
yeah.
why not? Why are we still looking at degrees in the universities? Just test people's skills and you get
Wow,
candidates. So I think
this
there's a
is such
shift.
a
Again,
brilliant
it's a slow
perspective.
shift, but the conversation is shifting. I'm happy to tell you.
No, 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 I think this is brilliant perspective,
Mhm.
and I think this is very useful, and uh, it kind of, they could conduct, rather than degrees and all that, after the basic filter, whatever they might have, they can actually assess by running their own test, uh,
Mhm.
or they have a department, or they again tell the hiring partners, well, can you run this test for us, right?
Mhm.
And then give us the results, uh, and then we will grade them according to how they answered. And um, I think that's much fairer. I think, coming to the
Yes.
topic, it's a fairer workplace we're talking about.
Yes.
And yeah, this is a fantastic way to go
And
about it.
actually, you know what? Let me I build on this because I just I remember the study I was reviewing the literature recently for a paper, and then one very inclusive intervention. I feel like it was one company, one where was it? I don't exactly remember, but what they did was to reduce disadvantages, because people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, especially different countries with different resources, what they did, because it was a skills-based assessment,
Yeah,
they gave free practice tests to all the candidates, everyone. So they have even more like fairer, they give them the opportunity to prepare, even if they didn't have access to it before. They now know, and they can practice if they want to, and then take the test. So that's kind of the most inclusive, at least in hiring, I think you can get. So that's a
yeah.
brilliant experiment.
Jensen, you are full of ideas and fantastic practical ideas. Um, I must say that even though, we're overrunning the interview times that we usually have, I feel like I have to grab your time again and simply uh, to make this place, this world, a better place.
Yeah.
Because I think if we genuinely able to do um, what you just said and probably more ideas that you haven't yet said, uh, I feel that the passion with which LSDB started this whole internship program, talking to the employers, getting them to hire them, and then spread all the diversity and help students from developing countries to be better at work. I think with your help, I think we could probably do a lot better. And I'm sure I would like to connect back to you again. So before we close, um, I would quickly ask you one final question. Um, what's your ultimate goal and vision or purpose of your life?
Oh, okay. That is a very big question, and I don't know if we have time for it. It's a very deep question because I take it very seriously. But because you said ultimate goal, that that's a
Yeah,
big one.
yeah,
But obviously, professionally, I would love to, as you said, communicate the knowledge, right? Because we're building knowledge, we're doing research, but it's not always out there. It remains within the academic community sometimes. So I'm happy to be part of this team, group of people who are communicating the information so we can make workplaces and the world a better place. So that's one thing. And but you ask vision and purpose in life again. That's a big question,
yeah.
but
That's a big one. Yes.
that's a big one. And I think I would say growth, like personal growth, is very, very important to me. And again, at a young age, I started traveling. I wanted to explore the world, and it was, growth meant exploring the world and like different cultures and different lives in different countries. And I just wanted to challenge myself, like, again, to grow. So that was really good, which is why, like, which led me to live in different countries, study, work in different countries. I did all sorts of things. So, and doing that, I didn't want to be selfish. Like, I'm like, okay, when I'm doing this, I have this urge, but let me also make the world a better place as well. So, like, that's why I chose economics, and I did what I did basically. But and then obviously, as you get older, I think the journey becomes a bit more inward. Like it's
Yeah,
about personal growth. It's about a bit like a spiritual growth, and all these things come in.
yeah,
And then we all, especially with the help of behavioral science, because again, from economics, I switched to behavioral economics, which is a bit more around psychology of people.
yeah.
And I did a little work in psychology. Then, like I did yoga and all these things. Like, and I have a very, very holistic view of the world right now.
Wow.
And I think, because when you do that, when you do all the work, I mean, you realize there are a lot of habits and assumptions you kind of adopt it, growing up. And then it's about really finding yourself and letting go of these assumptions and the conditionings and really find real you and to become a more authentic version of yourself. I think that's a really important thing in my life. And
Fantastic.
yeah,
Amazing. Amazing.
we
Thank
keep
you so much.
growing.
Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank
Of
you very
course.
much for your time.
Thank you so very much. Thanks for having me again.